Why do men always want sex but never a relationship? I could just tell you it's lust, but that won't actually help you because you can't actually do anything with that answer. You need to understand how lust works in a man's life, how it shapes his mind, his friendships, and even his need for validation. In this video, I'm going to be breaking down all of that in detail so you can decode men for yourself and separate the lustful ones from the serious ones. Honestly, by the end of this video, you'll understand how a man's mind works even better than the men do. I want you to pay very close attention to our opening analogy because it's going to encapsulate everything we're going to discuss in this entire conversation, and it's going to be a key element to understanding what I'm saying, okay? So we have a Tesla and we have a manual sports car, okay? The Tesla is automatic, it goes on autopilot, it turns itself, brakes itself, maps out its own destination. It doesn't even require a key for you to enter. The second car we have, the manual sports car, has a manual transmission. It's got a stick shift. It doesn't turn itself. Obviously, you have to turn it. It has no internal mapping, no keyless entry. You need to use a key. In fact, there's no fob anywhere, and it even has manual windows. Everything on this car is a manual. The reason I'm giving this analogy is because every man you meet, every man, is only going to be in one of these two cars at a time. He's either going to be in the car that drives him, or he's going to be in the car that he is driving. Now, I know this analogy isn't complete, but I'll show you why this is going to connect to everything we're going to discuss as time goes on. Now, let's discuss motivations. What I want you to understand is this is all connected, meaning when you see one action, it always comes from a reaction of other things, and eventually you'll get to the root source of why this thing is happening. With men, you have to understand they all have their own key sets of motivations, okay? Their motivations will drive them or push them to taking certain actions, okay? Those actions will lead them in particular directions. In some cases, those directions will be positive, and in some cases, those directions will be negative. All men, right, might have slightly different motivations, but in general, their motivations are going to be similar because they're men. In their masculine desire, especially as it relates to sex, that is going to motivate them, drive them to take particular actions in relationships and say particular things that push them in a particular direction that you then experience from them and with them in your relationships around them and in the process of you dating them. The reason I want you to understand this is you need to know that these motivations are going to differ from your motivations as a woman. So some of the things that I'm going to discuss here when I'm going to discuss men's desire for sex and how they view sex and their perspective on sex might not make sense to you because you might be asking yourself, wow, that's really reckless. Wow, why would a guy go out of his way to like ruin his life or do something that reckless just for sex? Why would sex matter that much, right? I'm going to put sex here, right? Why is sex so important that he's willing to take the action of ruining his life, right? Or sabotaging the good things he has in his life, leading him into a negative direction because of this simple motivation of sex, this simple desire of sex. Why is that so important? It's important because for men, because our motivations are different, the way we act on those motivations and the way those desires manifest themselves in our life differs from you, the woman. So sometimes when I bring up these concepts or I bring up these ideas and I bring up some of the reckless behavior or even self-sabotaging behavior, I want you to understand it derives from the root of the different motivations that men will have that come in different quantities and that might not make sense to you because you're in a different mind state. What you also must understand is everything has a hierarchy in terms of their motivations in someone's life. Now, for the most part, for men, sex is going to sit higher on this hierarchy, right? In terms of in their mind and their motivations and the things that drive them, then it will generally sit for you as a woman. That's okay. We're all different, so we don't have to be the same. Because it sits higher on this internal hierarchy, the priority that it ends up being in their life and the way they act on it ends up being a little bit different. Now, because this is high on the priority list, you'll see how damaging this can become if uncontrolled. Now let's discuss perspective, because this is really going to help you understand the different types of men you can encounter and what to be thinking about when you do encounter them. Let's give this analogy that you have two different guys being presented the same plate of food. The first guy being presented a plate of food, well, let me specify, this plate of food is going to be mac and cheese and baby back ribs, okay? Now, the first guy being presented this plate of food is a very, very wealthy boy. He comes from a rich family that's had money for many, many decades. And he's experienced private chefs. Every day he has a 5-star meal. He's basically got a Michelin restaurant inside his house. All he does is experience the finest foods that life has to offer. He's presented with this mac and cheese and these baby back ribs, and he sees them and he's like, I could do without them. This is peasant food. The cheese doesn't even look like it's properly been prepared. Where are the truffles? I don't get this. This looks like garbage food, okay? Now, the second boy being presented the same plate of food comes from a background in which he is in poverty. The town he's always lived in has been in poverty. He rarely even has clean drinking water, let alone a plate of mac and cheese and baby back ribs. Protein and meat is not even on the menu. He's presented with this mac and cheese and these baby back ribs, and he's like, oh my God. This is the best meal I've ever seen. This is amazing. I can't believe you would give this to me. Do I owe you something? Is there more of this? Can I take this back to my village? Can I take this back to my family? He is ecstatic. Same plate of food, but you have two totally different responses to that plate of food. The reason I'm giving you this example, this analogy, is because I want you to see for men, it's the same. See, even though this motivation of sex is high on the internal hierarchy in terms of the things that will push them and motivate them to do, depending on their experience level, depending on their attractiveness level, depending on who they are and what they're about, depending on their level of control or lack thereof, this plate of food, right, will have different perspectives for different men. Their reaction to that same plate of food, in this case, the food is representing sex, will be different. Their relationship with this plate of food, aka sex, will be different, right? And this is what I want you to take from this. When you meet men, you have to determine what kind of man are you? Meaning, what is your perspective and relationship with sex? Do you live with sex as something that is always running away from you? Is your relationship with sex that of a scarcity mindset? Oh, I need to hoard sex. I need to get as much sex as I can in as much places as I can from as many women as I can because it's always running away from me. I never have enough. The same way the boy who comes from poverty is going to be like, oh my God, I need to save every drop of this food. I need to make sure that I can take as much of this back home with me. I need to make sure it doesn't go to waste. Why? Because in his mind, food is always running away from him. Food is always scarce. Something like this doesn't come along every day. Whereas the wealthy boy, the boy who's always experiencing the finest foods, doesn't even bat an eyelash, even though you're probably presenting him with your best. He's seen the best of the best. And so his relationship to this plate of food is that of, hey, it's cool, I like it, yeah, food is good, but it's not the be-all and end-all of my life. In fact, I will gladly turn it down if it doesn't fit my already existing criteria. When you meet men, in the process of differentiating this, you want to be going for the men who have this type of relationship with food, aka sex in this case, right? You want to be around men with this type of mindset and relationship with sex, because if they have this approach to sex, then they're able to understand, even though I love food, even though I love sex, even though it's high on my internal hierarchy scale, I can turn it down if I need to. I can say no to it if it's going to sabotage my friendships or sabotage my relationships or sabotage my career. And I can gladly put it to the side while I do other things that are higher on the priority list in terms of my life, in terms of my career, in terms of my overall happiness, like building a real relationship, as opposed to being in this position where sex is always running away from me, and I will do anything that it takes to get this, even sabotage my life and sabotage my relationships. So then how do you get this answer, right? The answer is always lying in a man's history, okay? His history, meaning his track record, his reputation, will tell you a lot about his relationship to sex. Understanding not just who his ex-girlfriends have been, but how does he go about his love life? What is his perspective on dating? What is his perspective on sex and hooking up and things like that? All of that history will help you understand, is he a boy living in poverty, or is he a boy living in abundance and in wealth? So let's discuss the driving force. Remember the analogy that I gave you at the beginning of this video, and I talked about the two different cars that men could possibly be in, only one of those two. Now, I didn't mention to you what that car is going to be fueled by, because just like with any normal car, it needs fuel in order to actually go. Now, what is the fuel of this concept car that I'm discussing, okay? The fuel of this car is lust. Now, the reason lust is fueling both of these cars is because for men, when we grow up, lust is something that feels very natural to us as men. The pursuit of sex and the desire for sex is something that you're gonna have within you as a man, whether you grow up rich, whether you grow up poor, whether you grow up on this side of the country or the other side of the country, no matter the culture, race, or religion, lust is always going to fuel your car as a man. Now, why is it important to understand why that lust is fueling these cars? The same way when you drive your car to work or you drive your car to school or wherever it is that you're going, you understand that the way your car is powered is by putting gasoline in your car. You're able to work with your car to get you from point A to point B because you understand how your car works, what it's fueled by, so that you can work with it. It's the same thing for lust. Because lust is something that's going to fuel your car, whether you're driving the car or whether the car is driving you, as a man, you have to understand that lust is your fuel if you're going to even be aware enough to be able to work with your car and get to your desired destination. Because lust will drive men into one of two places. It'll either drive them into misery and chaos and self-sabotage, or it will drive them to success in the highest of heights. Now, how this relates to you, you need to be on your dates, gathering information and trying to understand, do you even understand how lust drives you as a man? Are you aware of these things? Or are you so unaware of how lust is driving you that you don't even know the fuel to your car? And because you don't know the fuel to your car, there's no possible way you know how to work with your car to get to an actual positive destination. Let me give you an example of that, right? Someone who does things like follows a whole bunch of half-naked women on Instagram, half-naked models that they've never met, will never meet, and don't even follow them back. Thousands of them, just thousands of these women, right? That's someone who doesn't understand how lust is fueling his car. Because if he understood how lust is fueling his car, he would understand that the way to work with your car is not by allowing lust to control you where you're seeing it every day, all the time, just allowing it to consume your mind. Every time you open your phone and open that Instagram app, you're seeing lust all over the place, allowing it to take you to places and do things on your mind, on your soul, on your spirit, and even in your life that you wouldn't regularly do if it wasn't always in front of you. This is a perfect example of the types of things you'll see when a man doesn't understand how lust fuels and drives his car. Right? Vice versa, when you start talking to a man about the challenges he faces in being a successful man and what it takes to be a successful man and the ways he needs to have discipline, a very intelligent man, who is the type of man that I want you to be looking for when you're on your dates, will be pointing to his battle with lust or the ability to have discipline as it relates to lust as one of the burning most important points to being successful. Successful men who have the right mindset and approach to relationships and have the wealthy, right, wealthy relationship with sex will tell you that lust is something that must be conquered in order for them to be successful. Lust is something they must have discipline towards in order to be successful. The men who you don't want will not understand the relationship between being a successful man and conquering lust, between being a successful man and having discipline as it relates to lust, because they don't even understand that lust is fueling their car. Now I want to discuss autopilot living, because with these two cars, remember, one is driving you and one you're being driven by. Let me ask you a question. If I were to give you the option of taking the car that you would be less likely to fall asleep in, which car would you go with? Would you go with the car that requires no effort, requires little to no thought, and is easy to relax in? Or would you go with the car that requires a lot of effort? You must pay attention in order to drive it because you got to be doing all of the gear shifts every time you accelerate and every time you decelerate. And a car that you really can never relax in. If you were trying to get into the car that you weren't going to fall asleep in. Most of you who are intelligent would say, yeah, I would take the manual car because the Tesla is going to make it very easy for me to fall asleep at the wheel, because all I have to do is get in the car and it's going to do all of the driving for me. So the reason that this is important is because, remember, I just told you lust is the fuel to both of these cars. Just in one scenario, the man is able to understand that it's the fuel, and he's driving the car to the destination that he wants to go to, understanding how that car drives and gets there. And in this scenario, lust is fueling the car, but lust is fueling the car on autopilot, meaning that in this scenario, the car is taking that man wherever it ends up taking that man. Men that you meet can only be in one of these two cars. And unfortunately, majority of the men that you meet, I'm just going to be honest with you, are going to be in the Tesla. Okay? I would probably say if you go out on a date with 10 men, that you'll meet 8 men who are in the Tesla. There will probably only be 2 men out of those 10 that will be in the manual car. That's okay, but I want you to understand you're more likely to meet a man in a Tesla on autopilot than you are to meet the guy in the sports car on a manual shifter. Because it's a lot easier to be on autopilot, considering the fact that all men grow up with the natural desire and motivation, like I talked about earlier, that lust is going to be a driving factor behind how and why they make decisions, why they say certain things, why they do certain things. You receive that as, oh, these men seem to all be looking for sex, but never a relationship. Why do they deceive me? Why do they lie to me? Why do they go behind my back and do all of these horrible things just in the pursuit of sex? Because their car is on autopilot. When you're not in control of your car, you sabotage friendships, you sabotage relationships, you sabotage your own career because you aren't even in control of where lust is taking you. When you meet men, very important to understand even what is your relationship to lust, as in how do you practice discipline as it relates to lust. If you're saying that you conquer it and you understand why it's important to have discipline towards it, how do you do that? Do you practice refraining from watching porn all the time, right? Do you do things in your life that help you separate what is a priority for me? And, how does lust play a part in the things that will try and sabotage my other priorities? How do I understand how to put away lust at times where my focus and energy needs to be on one thing in particular? This is where it's so important not just to ask questions, but to let a man truthfully be honest with you about what his already existing lifestyle is, right? And trying to get an understanding of, hey, even when you're single, what is your relationship to sex? What is your relationship to lust? And how do you manage that while still trying to be a successful man? Successful men will already have a strategy in place on how do I conquer lust and have discipline towards it while I pursue my own personal goals. Because smart, intelligent, disciplined men will always understand lust will be a roadblock between them and getting to their goals. The men who aren't the ones that you want, the men being driven in the Tesla, will not understand the relationship between putting away lust in order to get to your goals, and how if lust becomes an obstacle, you'll never get to where you want to go. Okay, so you need to be asking these questions and understanding the lifestyle that he chooses to live, and how he practices discipline in order to get the things that he wants. Once again, you're building up a profile within the history of who he has been, not just in this case, who he has been with his partners and his ex-girlfriends, but who he has been as a man in his life, and how he strategizes to create an environment in which he can become a successful man. So now we need to define what is lust and what is love, and how do they differ, and how do they show themselves when you meet a man in different ways. Let's think of some things that you'll see in a lustful man. Serial swiper. A serial swiper is essentially a guy who's always on dating apps, swiping right on a whole bunch of girls. How can you get an understanding if a guy is a serial swiper? Because I know some of you love dating apps. First of all, if he's on a dating app, there's definitely a high likelihood that he's a serial swiper. So avoiding dating apps is number one. But even if you do meet this guy on a dating app, getting an understanding of how long he's been on these dating apps, what the purpose is for him, even though he'll probably lie to you about what the purpose is. They always say it's for a real relationship, and it usually never is. But also, what is the success or failure rate that he's been having on the dating app? See, a lot of people get on their date and they forget the fact, especially if you meet a guy from a dating app, that, hey, if he's meeting me from a dating app, there's a good likelihood that he's also met other women on or from this dating app. If that's the case, why have those relationships been unsuccessful? What has transpired in the process of them getting to know each other and going on dates, whether it be one date or multiple dates, that has led to him still being and going back to the dating app even after meeting multiple women from the dating app? So next we have DMs to strangers constantly, okay? This is one of the things that you can kind of get an understanding of when you first meet a man and there's not as much pressure on him to make you feel like he's loyal to you. Just getting, playing kind of the, oh, I'm a cool girlfriend role. I don't judge that much. I know you're already a single guy and I know how single guys are, and getting an understanding of how often do you shoot your shot in the DMs? And he's like, oh, I have this little game plan where, I shoot my shot, I see how the girls respond. And if they don't respond, they don't, or whatever the case, sometimes shooters got to shoot, right? These are part of activities that will be described as lustful activities. Because even though it sounds innocent to DM random strangers and just shoot your shot, the reality of it is that energy would be better spent trying to make something of yourself as a man. I just have to be, like, I'm telling you this is like, I've been in both places, okay? I've been here and I've been here. I'm telling you as someone who transitioned from being an unsuccessful man, changing my mindset into being a successful man, I had to go through this transformation myself. So I'm not telling you this from pie in the sky, okay? I myself had to understand that the energy that I put out and I focus on has to be channeled in places that make me successful. DMing random strangers does not make me a successful man, right? Which is why I say when it comes to love, men who operate under this understanding, they understand how to focus their energy in important places, on important tasks, and with only important people, okay? We can also discuss following tons of random models, okay? I'm not talking about if he knows someone that went to his high school that happens to be a model and follows him back. I'm talking about the guys who will follow a whole bunch of random people, strangers they've never met and will never meet or come in contact with, that are posting a whole bunch of provocative pictures and not adding any value to their life except for a distraction. Okay, right? And also obviously being a corn addict. Okay, you should know that by now. Now, on the opposite sense, I talked about building with people, understanding the value in relationships, and not just any relationship, but relationships with the right person, and with the right people, even extending as far as their friendships, having purpose to their friendships, and not trying to be friends with everyone, but trying building those friendships and close friendships with the right people, okay? Also discussing being mindful of what he follows and what his mind comes in contact with on a daily basis. I know it sounds like, oh, I'm trying to tell you to be with a guy who's a super stickler and a guy who's super aware and super conscious and all that other stuff. But yeah, I am, which is the exact reason why I say basically 2 out of 10 men you'll meet will actually be operating in this place in their life, right? Will actually understand how important it is to protect his mind. And even on a daily basis, to be aware of the people that I'm following that are showing up on my timeline constantly. Are those people inspiring me, motivating me, adding some sort of value to my life via their information or their knowledge? Or are those people distracting me from my purpose? Are those people making it harder for me to build connections? Are those people reminding me or taking me to a place that's going to lead to a lot of negative consequences? Being able to be aware of that and actually acting on it is one of the biggest signs that a man is operating in this frequency, right? Whereas a guy who's doing some of these things is operating in a lustful frequency. So this is the part that's going to hurt your feelings, and this is the part that a lot of men won't want to admit to. It's kind of the hardest listen of the entire show or video here. We're going to discuss peer pressure for men, and we're also going to discuss male validation from one man to another. Whenever you have a group of guys together, they're going to do what boys do, and they're going to start talking about women, because we understand how much of a motivation and high on the internal hierarchy sex is for men. So back in the day, before we had technology and social media and all this other stuff, when we were cavemen, men would seek male validation by doing things like trying to catch the biggest deer on the hunt, bring it back to the tribe, and the other men would be impressed, like, oh my God, look at your skills in combat, look at your skills on the hunt. You are a more manly man than all of the manly men, right? You now fit in. The goal has always been for men to feel like they fit in with their other group of guys. Now, of course, in today's day and age, we no longer go on hunts to get our food. So men still look for validation from other men, but we do it in different ways. One of the main ways we do it nowadays is with the women that we conquer. Now, this is where you're not going to like this, and you're going to kind of feel a little bit poopy, but I have to be honest with you, okay, about guy talk. When guys get around each other and there are no girls around to kind of spy on us or see what we're saying, this is how we talk with each other. We take out our phones and we say, oh, bro, you never gonna guess this girl I smashed last week, bro. Let me pull up her Instagram. And then they pull up the Instagram and they're like, oh, look at her. Look at her. Oh, she bad. She's super bad. And they wait for their guys to confirm, right, the fact that, oh, the girl I smashed last week, she's super bad, right? You think she's bad. And they show everyone, oh, look at what she looks like. Hey, what you think? What you think? Hey, yeah, she nice, right? Look, it's fat, bro. And it's fat, I'm telling you. And as horrible as this sounds, we get with our guy friends and we start treating women like trading cards. Okay, I'm having a real honest conversation with you. I can't lie about this. I'm saying. When we see other guys, we treat these women like trading cards as a way of fitting in, right? Because we understand if these men know that I'm smashing top tier women who are super attractive, I'm smashing all the baddies, okay? On a consistent basis too. You can't just smash one baddie and then you don't smash anyone for the next 6 months. Then the guys will congratulate you and say, oh, you the man now. And because you the man, we raise you up. You taking some rankings above now. We respect you. We validate you as a man. And depending on how much validation from other men matters to that man, he will be more eager to do things, even do things that hurt you, the woman. That in lying to you, in deceiving you, in telling you one thing, but really it's another. Because he's trying to get to the ultimate goal of smashing so that he can treat you like a trading card and then show his friends. I know this sucks to hear, but I want you to understand how this happens, why it happens, and the root of this happening. It's the peer pressure. It's the desire for the male validation. And because of this desire for male validation, it becomes so deep rooted that even when he's not necessarily going to be telling his boys about this experience or telling them about everything that he did, even if he doesn't plan on saying anything in the world, he might just do it, meaning like sleep with you or get with you or lie and deceive you in order to sleep with you. Just for the simple fact he knows if my boys did know about this, they would think I'm the man. And so this deep-rooted understanding of, hey, I'm more validated if I sleep with more women and I do it no matter what the cost, as long as I accomplish it, I'm higher on the hierarchy as a man and more men will respect me. Now, how does this affect you and how are you supposed to combat this or see what type of man this man is? In order for you to kind of understand how much peer pressure plays a role in his life, you got to do two things. You have to start getting information on what his relationship is with his boys, how he views them, how they interact with each other, and then you actually have to see firsthand how he interacts with those boys when he's around them. And as much as you possibly can, if you are around, try and play the backseat role where you're not the star of the show. Try and almost like be one of the boys where you encourage them to be themselves and you try not to impress upon them anything that you feel or think, and let them speak as they are as boys. What I know happens, because I've experienced this myself, if you hang out with a group of guys long enough, for a long enough period of time, they start off being aware and conscious of the fact that you're there. Okay, so I'm gonna draw you out so you can see this visually, right? They start off being conscious of the fact that you're around. And they hide how they talk, they hide how they interact with each other, they don't really be their real selves. As time goes on though, they kind of get so used to you being around that they sometimes slip up and say some of the things that they usually talk about because they're there with each other. And when they're interacting with each other, sometimes they make the jokes that they usually make around when no girls are around. And slowly but surely, you start to hear a semblance of how they really are and how they really interact with each other. And as you encourage it and you say, oh, I'm just one of the girls. I'm just one of the guys. I don't really care. It's not really a big deal to me. Hey, you guys do you. I'm not judging you. They get more and more comfortable being real around you and exposing how they really interact with each other, how they really talk to each other, what they really talk about, how they really feel about women, right? And once you gather this information, you'll get an understanding of what he's even trying to fit into in the first place. Then the second major aspect of this in terms of determining how peer pressure affects his life is you need to gather an understanding through the process of meeting him and getting to know him. How much does he seek out validation from others in his life, especially men? Okay? How much does he seek out validation from his father? How much does he seek out validation from his older brother? Right? How much does he seek out validation in general or feel the need personally to prove himself to a group of people? How often do you see him go out of his way to say, oh, I need to prove something to those people. I need those people to accept me. I need those people to want me or desire me or think I'm this or think I'm that. Start to ask him questions to get an understanding of how high on his own internal hierarchy does male validation sit for him? Because the higher male validation sits for him, and the more you see him be going out of his character or doing weird and strange things just for the validation of someone else, specifically a male, then the more likely he is to succumb to the peer pressure of saying, I need to fit in with this group of men or my boys. I need to show them that I'm the man. So I'll do anything, even if it means sabotaging my relationships, even if it means deceiving the women who think that I'm here for a relationship, but I'm really just here for sex, into sleeping with me so that I can use them as a trading card to present to my boys. Now we're going to get to the part where we're going to discuss something that is kind of sad, but very, very true, and I want you to be looking out for. We're going to discuss post-nut clarity. Now, for those of you who don't know that terminology, post-nut clarity essentially is referring to after a man busts a nut, climaxes for the first time, especially for the first time with you in this situationship or talking stage, things change, okay? The way he feels changes and a level of clarity comes to him about what he really wants and desires. Let's discuss this by talking about the two versions of man. Pre-nut version of him and the post-nut version of him. The pre-nut version of him wants to date, is ready for a long distance relationship, let's just say for the sake of this example, and is willing to do anything for you and for this relationship. The post-nut version of him, you see he's kind of sad and limp here, is not ready to date, is not ready for a long distance relationship, and is not willing to do much for you or for this relationship. How does this happen and why does this happen? See, remember how I talked about the autopilot and I talked about being driven by lust and not even understanding that lust is a fuel source for you driving your car. In this scenario, what a lot of men will do is, because lust is controlling them and they're unaware of it, they will actually within themselves believe that they want certain things. But in reality, all of the things they think that they desire are really just disguised as lust. And the desire for lust, and because he desires lust so much and he knows he's so close to getting that fulfilled with you, he convinces himself that he's also ready for all of these other things that really have nothing to do with lust. He feels like he's ready for those things because of how excited he is for the possibility of delivering on the promise of satisfying his lustful feelings. And in this scenario, what ends up happening is after he finishes bursting that nut and climaxing, he then realizes when lust is no longer the driving factor because he's already gotten that satisfied, that all the things that he wanted before and all the things he thought he was ready for before, I'm not really that ready for those things. And the mask is unveiled because no longer can lust kind of cover up what are his real desires, which was just lust and none of these things. The best example that I can give of that is one that I see all the time when women ask me private questions. By the way, you can ask me a private question by going down into the link in my bio. Now, one of the things that I see a lot is when women will be dealing with men in long distance relationships. You meet him, you're chatting with him, you're on phone calls, you're texting all day, FaceTiming all the time, 24/7. You eventually meet him, and when you eventually meet him, he's telling you how he wants this relationship. He's ready to do this. He's ready to take trips. He's ready to fly to you. He's ready to spend thousands of dollars booking Airbnbs and trips and vacations so that you guys can be together and see each other. Then you finally sleep with each other. Only then afterwards, he's like, you know what? I've got a mom thing because my mom has a thing where I need to see her all the time and be with her. I also have a brother thing and a sister thing and a work thing and a me thing. And I only have 9 toes and my fingernails aren't clipped. And then they start making all of these excuses and talking about how they're second guessing their decision and don't know what to do and not sure if they want this anymore right after they bust that nut. So how does this affect you and why is this important to understand within men so that you can avoid this and understand how a man's mind is working? Whenever you're in this stage where you're pre-nut, this is where you need to be meticulous about saying, before we get to this stage, I need to make sure that what you're saying you're desiring as it relates to me and this relationship is actually what you desired, and it's not lust disguised as a desire to build. Okay? I know it sounds very weird and very strange, but it happens a lot within men. They even think within themselves they're ready to build, not realizing they're not actually ready to build. How do you find out this answer truthfully? You have to then go and make it your business to say, okay, you say you want to date. You say you're ready for long distance. You say you're willing to do anything. Let's have a conversation about logistics. This is where a lot of men who are really disguising it as lust will shut down. Or they'll say, oh, let's talk about that at a later date. Or, oh, we'll figure it out, okay? When you sit down and you say, let's have a talk about logistics. Let's go through. If you say that this is the thing that you want, let's talk about everything that would have to happen or transpire that we would have to commit to in order for these things to happen. For example, if you say you're ready for long distance, tell me, at what frequency are we going to be seeing each other, and how are you realistically going to make that happen? okay, you live in Europe and I live in the USA. I'm gonna make sure that every single month I take a trip to you and I book an Airbnb for at least a week and we'll see each other all the time. It'll be great. We'll have so much fun and we'll love each other till we pass away. He says that and you say, okay, how much is a plane ticket going from where you live in the USA to me in Europe? He's like, oh, a plane ticket's something light. It's like, maybe like $2,000, for the round trip. Okay. The plane ticket is $2,000. You're going to come to me every month and spend $2,000 on a plane ticket and also book an Airbnb for a week for another, what? $1,000. So every single month, you're going to spend $3,000 coming to see me for 1 week and going back to your area. Yeah, it's fine. Money ain't a thing. Yeah, what type of job do you work? Oh, I'm in between jobs. I'm doing a thing where I'm figuring things out and I'm trying to get my stuff together and but I'll get there. So let's get this right. And you see, this is where logistics becomes disappointing for men to discuss, because if they just want to get to the nut, to the climax, they're like, oh, this is agony. Why are you asking so many questions? But then you ask, okay, you're in between jobs. And realistically, for you to see me once a week, every month, it's going to cost you $3,000. How are we possibly going to make that work if you're going to have to figure out how to get $3,000 out of your bank account when it doesn't even have $3,000 total in it every single month, based on the job that you work or the lack of jobs that you work? This is where, when you start asking about logistics, you'll realize, oh, this is one of those situations where the desire to build in this relationship is actually wrapped and disguised as lust. Because I'm telling you, see, when you start talking about logistics, you'll realize every point you make when it comes to the logistics of doing this and doing everything that he's saying he wants to do, you'll realize these will be the exact excuses that he'll use after he busts that nut. I know it's very graphic. So, for example, in that scenario where you don't discuss logistics, you just believe him when he says he's ready for the relationship, he's ready for long distance, he's ready for all these things. And you get to this point where you're in the post-nut cycle. He's going to use exactly what you would have discussed in the logistics part pre-nut as the excuses of why he can't build a relationship with you. He will say, well, I'm in between jobs now, and it's going to be tough because then I'd have to spend like $3,000 every single month just to come to see you, and I don't want to put that burden on you, and it's going to be a lot of pressure on me, and it's really hard because I have this, and I have work, and I have school, and everything you would have discussed logistically, he will now use that as an excuse. And it will be you who will have egg on your face, because you'll be like, wait a second, but all of these things you're using as an excuse we could have discussed and talked about beforehand. Why did you wait until now to discuss those things with me, now that I've seemingly already put my foot forward and committed to this by allowing you to sleep with me? Why couldn't we discuss these logistical elements beforehand? Because lust was masking these desires, right? And lust was convincing both him and you that he was ready for something that he was never even ready for. Now let's discuss blissful ignorance, because this will be a weapon. Some people will call it weaponized incompetence that men will use on you as it relates to their relationships with you and extracting sex from you by acting as if they don't know, or their lack of information is what's stopping them from doing the right thing or treating you the right way, or they didn't expect this to happen. Let me give you an example of that, right? For example, let's say for the sake of argument, you start dating a guy and he says he's so ready for a relationship. He's so ready to be serious with you. He's so ready to be serious in life and move to the next step, in life, right? Then after a couple of weeks, you find out that he got drunk with his friends and then he slept with a random girl. And so you're calling him out on it and you're trying to address him about this situation and how it was wrong. He then says, well, I didn't really know that would happen, and I didn't plan for it to happen, and I didn't know when I get drunk that I wouldn't be able to have my wits without me, and they took me to a strange place, and I was with my boys, but I was so confused, and I was so blacked out that night I could barely remember. See, this is what men will do, and how you'll end up finding yourself in a situation where You feel like men always want sex, but they never want the relationship, because they actually use the fact that they have blissful ignorance to this information that they don't know, right? For example, information that they don't understand how being drunk and being at a club late night with your boys is going to escalate and lead to some bad situations that will hurt your ability to have successful, serious relationships, right? They don't know. They're lacking that information. That allows them to escape accountability. I didn't draw it very well there, but accountability, okay? Because if they don't have to be accountable to the fact that, oh, I just didn't have that information, well, then they feel like I can get away with a lot more. Because as soon as you transfer information from the I don't know bucket to the I know bucket, now you actually have to admit, I did this thing despite the fact I know I shouldn't have done this thing. And if that's the case, then I purposely sabotage this relationship knowing that the end goal or the end result would have been something negative, would have been you're upset, would have been I cheated on you, would have been I deceived you or went behind your back or tricked you, okay? And so this is the problem. You have to then, when you start meeting guys, you have to get a very clear understanding. What information do you know and understand as it relates to a relationship? What's appropriate, what's inappropriate, what are traps in a relationship, right? Or in a successful one, meaning like, what are the ways you could slip up, even if you don't intend to slip up, but they will put you in an environment or in a position to slip up. Like getting blackout drunk with your boys at a nightclub and being out till 3 a.m. and going to random strangers' houses and not having your Uber account that you can't Uber yourself home. Relying on someone else to drive you home. They want to go to an after party, so you have to go with them. Is this in your information bucket of I know? Or are you putting all of this information in the information bucket of I don't know? Because if he's going to be of the mindset that, you know, oh yeah, let's not discuss this. Oh, no need to talk about hypotheticals. They're hypothetical situations that would never happen. Then when it does happen, he gets to say, we never discussed it. I didn't know. I wasn't aware. I didn't think that this would happen. Blissful ignorance. If you want to ensure that this isn't going to be one of those guys who just wants sex and doesn't want a relationship for real, that you address blissful ignorance. How aware are you of the challenges that you will face with lust and your relationship with lust that will tempt you, that will put you in a position to be tempted and succumb to the pressure or the temptation because you're out of your wits, because you're high, because you're drunk, because you're in a strange place, because you don't have your mental together, you're stressed out, whatever the case may be. Do you understand how that affects you? Do you understand how to avoid putting yourselves in those positions or those environments? If you do not understand that, then I cannot be with you. Because you're going to be one of those men that uses that ignorance, that lack of information as an excuse to not be accountable. So then the question becomes, why don't men change? If some of them have this understanding, or if some of them know that they need to conquer lust in order to be a successful man, why don't they bother to do those things to become a successful man? Why is majority of these men unsuccessful and being driven by lust and just allowing it to ruin their lives? Because the same way people know how to get in shape, but they don't bother to. The same way people know how to get rich by saving money and investing it, but they still spend their money on useless things. Even though you might have the answer or know what it takes to get to where you want to go, only a small percentage of people will actually do that thing. Why? Because sitting back, relaxing, and just allowing life to pass you by is a lot easier than doing the hard thing, which is putting your head down, saying, I want to make a change. I need to take action on my life if I want to see that change. And I'm going to actually put it into action by doing it every single day and being consistent with it. Most people will never do that. That's just the reality of life and anything, okay? Now, even when it comes to lust and conquering that, most men will never bother to break this cycle. The cycle of lust leading to bad decisions leading to bad outcomes making you overall miserable because you're lonely, you can't build good relationships, you're all constantly single, you can't find a good woman, all of those, you can't be successful in your career, whatever the case may be, right? Even though a lot of men will be able to recognize this pattern within their life, a lot of them still won't bother to change their life or really look at themselves in the mirror and make a true adjustment. Why will they not do that? Because they lack intention. And I want you to be thinking about this here. Majority of the men you meet, unfortunately, will lack intention in everything that they do. They will lack intention in their life. They will lack intention at their job. They will lack intention in their career, their passions, their hobbies, with their family, with their friendships. Their life will be full of a lack of intention. It directly correlates to what you'll see from that man in your relationship with him. If he lacks intention at his job, with his friendships, with his family, in everything that he does, he will lack intention with you. And he is much more likely to do things like seek out sex from you, sexual gratification from you, but not actually be looking to build with you. Because in order to build with you, he has to start with intention, saying, I'm here for this specific reason. I know this reason, and I'm also going to communicate that reason to her, and I'm going to act on that reason, that overarching theme of why I'm here, every single day in every decision I make as it relates to me and this relationship I have with her. Having intention as a man is what keeps you on track, understanding what your overall goal is that you're shooting for. And it helps you break down your long-term goal into shorter-term goals to eventually reach the long-term goal. If you don't understand how to do that, how to process that, how to work with that, and have intention in your life, there's no way you'll magically be able to get that skill set as it relates to building relationships. So when you meet guys, you really need to get an understanding of how much intention does he already have in his existing life, even outside of you. Is he able to have intention as a single man, not in a relationship, not dating anyone, just focusing on himself? Now, everyone, let's say I'm focusing on myself. Okay, you're focusing on yourself. Cool. Now, when you focus on yourself, how much intention do you have in your life? What does that look like for your job? And you don't have to interrogate the guy in order to get this answer. The easiest way to get this answer is to ask when he says, for example, oh, I work at this one factory downtown and, we make water bottles. Cool. You work at that factory making water bottles. Why did you choose that factory? What was the thinking behind that? Oh, I just needed a job. I just need something to do. Okay, so that's not something you plan to do forever. You know what? I don't really know what I'm going to do later. I don't think I want to do this job, but I'm not sure what else I'm going to do. So what's your intention here, right? What do you want to do? I'm not sure. I haven't really thought about it. I haven't given much. I could do this. I could do that. I could do that. Do you see how when you start asking why, you'll realize as you ask more whys that guy doesn't have an answer. Because if I had intention as a man, I'd be able to tell you why I'm taking action in this particular way. I'd be able to tell you what the course of action is, what the plan is, what the strategy is. Doesn't mean he has to be 100% correct. But the thought process should be, I take this action because this is the overarching plan. In order to get to this overarching plan, I need to take these steps towards getting to there in the first place. See, the men who have discipline, the men who drive their car, like I talked about in the beginning, the men who are not on autopilot, allowing their car to drive them around, will understand this concept. They will live with intention, and you're much more likely to encounter the type of man who will not just be looking for sex, but will actually be one of the few men also looking to build a real relationship.